A woman vanishes for 10 whole days after visiting the billionaire, and the cameras show something nobody can explain. She's seen running toward him in fear, grabbing onto him, and then the two of them disappear into a secret room just seconds before the entire penthouse goes dark. But when she finally returns, she's not broken. She's changed, like she's carrying a truth too dangerous to speak. The billionaire stays silent. She stays shaken. And the world begins to wonder. What really happened in that room? Why did the cameras cut out at the exact moment they vanished? And what shocking secret did she learn in the dark? One powerful enough to destroy them both. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now, and if this story speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The rising sun painted streaks of orange across the cracked ceiling of Vivian Cole's studio apartment. She stirred beneath her thin blanket as the Georgia heat already began seeping through the walls, making the small space feel like a sauna. The window air conditioning unit had given up months ago, and her landlord's promises to fix it remained as empty as her bank account. Vivian's eyes fluttered open, immediately landing on the stack of unopened bills on her bedside table. The red "Final Notice" stamp on the top envelope made her stomach clench. Next to the bills, her phone displayed a text message that made her heart sink even further. Audition cancelled. Role filled internally. Sorry. Well, good morning to you too, she muttered, forcing herself to sit up. The springs of her fold-out couch creaked in protest. She padded across the worn carpet to her makeshift vanity, really just a mirror propped against the wall on a second-hand desk. Vivienne pulled out her script from yesterday's audition, determined not to let another rejection derail her morning routine. She'd learned long ago that consistency was sometimes the only thing keeping her dreams alive. The truth is, I never stopped believing in magic, she recited to her reflection, trying to inject warmth into the words despite the heaviness in her chest. Even when the world tried to convince me otherwise. Her voice trailed off as she caught sight of her mother's medical bills peeking out from beneath her script. The sound of a car horn outside jolted her back to reality. She had exactly 45 minutes to get ready for her shift at Rosie's diner. Vivienne moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. Quick shower, hair pulled back neatly, pristine white uniform despite its age. She'd learned to press it using the bathroom sink and her flat iron when money for the laundromat was tight. The diner was already bustling when she arrived, the morning regulars settling into their usual booths. "There's my favorite actress," called Jerry, the elderly man who always ordered 2 eggs over easy and left her generous tips when he could. "Still waiting for my big break, Jerry." Vivian replied with a warm smile, already reaching for the coffee pot. The familiar rhythm of the diner, pour, serve, smile, repeat, helped quiet the anxiety about her mounting bills. During her break, while eating a sandwich in the back alley, her phone buzzed. The caller ID showed her agent's name, Marcus, and her heart skipped. After the morning's cancellation, she wasn't sure she could handle more disappointment. "Hello?" she answered cautiously. "Vivian, listen carefully." Marcus's voice was unusually serious. "I have something big, really big, but I need your word that whatever we discuss stays completely confidential." She straightened up, sandwich forgotten. "Of course. What's going on?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the Daily Grind after your shift? And Viv, this could be life-changing money." The rest of her shift passed in a blur of coffee refills and distracted smiles. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the diner's windows, Vivian hung up her apron and headed to the small cafe where Marcus waited. The Daily Grind was quiet, with just a few students hunched over laptops in the corners. Marcus sat in the furthest booth, 2 untouched coffees in front of him. His usual easy smile was replaced by an expression of intense focus. "Before I tell you anything," he began as she slid into the booth, I need you to sign this." He pushed a non-disclosure agreement across the table. Vivienne's eyebrows rose as she scanned the document. "Marcus, what's going on?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Adrian Cross needs a fiancé." She blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Adrian Cross, CEO of Cross Industries, worth billions, needs someone to pose as his fiancé for 6 weeks. His company's facing some PR challenges, and there are rumors circulating that could damage both him and the company. He needs to project stability, commitment, family values." Vivienne's mind spun. Everyone knew Adrian Cross. His face was splashed across business magazines, his name synonymous with corporate success and cold calculation. "And he wants me?" Marcus nodded. "You're perfect, talented enough to pull it off, unknown enough to be discreet, and—" He hesitated. There's a reason they specifically requested a woman of color. The company's being accused of discrimination in their hiring practices. This kills 2 birds with 1 stone. A familiar weight settled in Vivienne's stomach. "So I'd be a diversity hire and a PR stunt all in one?" "You'd be getting paid more for 6 weeks than most people make in 2 years." Marcus countered gently. "Think about your mum's medical bills, Viv. Think about having a real shot at pursuing acting full-time." The mention of her mother's bills made Vivienne's protest die in her throat. She thought about the final notices piling up at home, about the medications her mother couldn't afford, about all the doors that remained closed despite her talent and determination. "What exactly would this involve?" she asked finally. Marcus pulled out a thick contract. "Public appearances, charity events, some social media presence. You'll need to move into his penthouse for authenticity, but you'll have your own suite. Everything, clothing, transportation, expenses, will be covered. The contract is very specific about maintaining appropriate boundaries." Vivienne's hands shook slightly as she accepted the contract. When would this start? "They need an answer tonight. If you agree, you'd begin tomorrow." She stared at the contract, her mind racing. This wasn't how she'd imagined her big break would come. Not even close. But maybe, just maybe, this could be the stepping stone she needed. The walk home felt surreal, the contract burning a hole in her bag. In her tiny apartment, Vivienne opened her laptop, the screen's glow illuminating her face as she read through every detail of what she was about to agree to. Finally, as midnight approached, she closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, the same one her mother had taught her when things seemed impossible. "Lord, guide my steps." With a deep breath, she opened her eyes and signed her name on the contract, her signature steady despite the trembling in her heart. The stack of unpaid bills seemed to watch her from the corner, a reminder of why she'd just agreed to play the most challenging role of her life, fake fiancé to Atlanta's most notorious billionaire. The morning sun streaked through Vivienne's studio apartment windows as her alarm chimed at 6 o'clock. She had barely slept, her mind racing with thoughts of the contract she'd signed and the man she was about to meet. Rolling out of bed, she padded to her tiny bathroom, studying her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but there was determination in her gaze. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, splashing cold water on her face. "It's just another role, just a really, really high-stakes role." After a quick shower, Vivienne stood before her closet, considering her options carefully. The contract had mentioned a stylist would be provided later, but for this first meeting, she needed to make the right impression on her own. She selected a simple navy blue dress that hit just below her knees, professional without trying too hard. Her mother had helped her buy it for auditions last year, stretching her nurse's salary to give her daughter a chance at success. As she twisted her dark curls into a neat bun, Vivienne's hands trembled slightly. She kept her makeup minimal and professional, light foundation, mascara, and a touch of lip gloss. No jewelry except for small pearl earrings, another gift from her mother. The rideshare arrived at 7:30, and Vivian watched through the window as her familiar neighborhood gave way to Atlanta's sleek business district. The driver whistled as they approached the Cross Industries building, a gleaming tower of steel and glass that seemed to pierce the sky. "Fancy place," he commented. "You got an interview?" "Something like that," Vivian replied softly, her heart pounding as she took in the building's imposing facade. The security desk in the lobby was staffed by 2 guards who checked her ID against their list. One of them, an older man with salt and pepper hair and alert eyes, introduced himself as Mason Reed, head of security. "Miss Cole," he said, his tone professional but not unkind. "Mr. Cross is expecting you. Please follow me." The private elevator required a special key card, which Mason swiped before stepping back. "Top floor," he instructed. "Someone will meet you there." The elevator rose smoothly, floor numbers ticking upward as Vivienne tried to steady her breathing. 45 stories later, the doors opened directly into a stunning penthouse foyer. The space was immaculate, all clean lines, pale marble, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the Atlanta skyline. A young woman in a crisp suit greeted her. "Miss Cole, welcome. Mr. Cross is in his office. This way, please." They walked through the penthouse, their footsteps echoing on the marble floors. Vivian glimpsed a sleek kitchen, a formal dining room, and what appeared to be a library before they reached a heavy wooden door. The assistant knocked once before opening it. Adrian Cross stood behind a massive desk, backlit by the morning sun streaming through the windows behind him. He was tall, with dark hair swept back from a face that looked younger in person than in his magazine photos. His charcoal suit was impeccably tailored, and his posture spoke of rigid self-control. "Miss Cole," he said, his voice deep and measured. "Thank you for being prompt." Vivian stepped forward, offering her hand. "Mr. Cross, thank you for this opportunity." His handshake was firm but brief, his eyes, a startling shade of green, studying her with analytical precision. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." The assistant disappeared, closing the door behind her. Vivian settled into one of the leather chairs facing Adrian's desk, forcing herself to maintain good posture despite her nerves. "I assume you've reviewed the contract thoroughly." Adrian began, seating himself. "Yes, I have. 6 weeks of public appearances, social media presence, and residing here in the penthouse to maintain the appearance of an engaged couple." He nodded, his expression unchanged. "The situation is delicate. My company is facing certain challenges. The board believes that my personal life, or apparent lack thereof, is contributing to investor uncertainty. This arrangement will help stabilize public perception." "I understand," Vivian said carefully, "and I'm prepared to help create that stability. But I'd like to know more about how we're supposed to have met. People will ask questions." Something flickered in Adrian's eyes, surprise, perhaps, at her practical approach. He opened a folder on his desk. "Our story is that we met 6 months ago at a charity theater event. You were performing. I was attending as a donor. We began dating quietly, and I proposed last week during a private dinner. Simple enough to remember," Vivian noted, "though we should probably add some details to make it more convincing. Small things couples would know about each other." Adrian's eyebrows rose slightly. "Such as?" "Well, what's your coffee order? Do you have any allergies? What side of the bed do you sleep on? These are things people might expect us to know." For a moment, Adrian looked almost uncomfortable. "Black coffee, no allergies, right side." He answered stiffly. "And you?" "Caramel latte with an extra shot, allergic to shellfish, left side," Vivian replied. "See? details make it real. They spent the next hour rehearsing their story, practicing how they would interact in public. Adrian was clearly uncomfortable with physical contact, so they established minimum necessary gestures, hand-holding, the occasional touch to an arm or back. Vivian noticed how he tensed slightly whenever they practiced these movements. As the morning wore on, they moved to the penthouse's living room to practice walking and sitting together. The space was beautiful but sterile, lacking any personal touches. Adrian maintained his professional demeanor, but Vivian caught glimpses of something else beneath the surface. A slight tremor in his hands when they practiced standing close, a flash of uncertainty in his eyes when discussing intimate details of their supposed relationship. The sun was setting when Adrian finally called an end to their practice session. "The PR team will contact you about our first public appearance," he said, walking her to the elevator. "The movers will bring your things tomorrow morning." Vivian nodded, stepping into the elevator. As the doors began to close, she caught one last look at Adrian, standing straight and tall, hands clasped behind his back. But something in his posture suggested loneliness rather than strength. The descent gave her time to process the day. Adrian Cross was exactly as the media portrayed him, controlled, precise, intimidating. But there were cracks in that perfect facade, hints of vulnerability that made her wonder what lay beneath all that careful composure. Mason was waiting in the lobby to escort her out. As she stepped into the warm evening air, Vivian took a deep breath, her mind already racing with all the changes tomorrow would bring. She had just agreed to play the most complicated role of her life, opposite a man who seemed to have forgotten how to be anything but a carefully constructed image of success. The rideshare home was quiet, giving her time to reflect on the day's events and the guarded man she would soon pretend to love. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Atlanta's sleek downtown buildings as Vivian approached the Cross Industries Tower once again. Her simple black dress felt appropriate for the wardrobe fitting and media training ahead, though she couldn't help fidgeting with the hem as she walked through the lobby's gleaming marble entrance. "Good afternoon, Miss Cole." The concierge greeted her warmly. "Mr. Cross is expecting you. Please proceed to the private elevator." Vivian smiled, already noting how different the treatment was now that she was officially Adrian's fiancée. Yesterday, she'd needed 3 forms of ID and a thorough security check. Today, she was welcomed like family. The elevator climbed smoothly to the penthouse level. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doors opened to reveal Adrian standing in his usual precise posture, hands clasped behind his back. Today he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her old car. "Right on time," he noted, the faintest hint of approval in his voice. "The stylist is setting up in the main room." They walked together through the vast penthouse. Vivian was still struck by how the space managed to be both luxurious and impersonal, like an upscale hotel suite rather than a home. The styling team had transformed the living room into a makeshift boutique, with racks of designer clothes and a mobile makeup station. "We'll start with the charity gala outfits," Adrian explained as the stylists descended upon them. "The event is in 3 days. We need to appear perfectly coordinated." For the next hour, they tried on various combinations of evening wear while practicing their rehearsed stories. Adrian would begin. "We met at the theatre fundraiser last spring," and Vivian would seamlessly add details about his donation to youth arts programs, her performance in the showcase, how he'd waited afterward to compliment her acting. "Your timing is improving," Adrian commented as she smoothed down a midnight blue gown. "Though we should work on making the physical contact appear more natural." Vivian nodded, noting how he still tensed slightly when she touched his arm. They were practicing a casual embrace when Adrian's phone buzzed sharply. His expression changed instantly, the careful mask slipping to reveal genuine concern as he read the message. "What's wrong?" Vivian asked, her hand still resting on his sleeve. Before he could answer, a faint beeping sound echoed through the penthouse. Adrian's posture went rigid, his eyes darting to the windows. "We need to—" The rest of his words were drowned out by a thunderous crash from somewhere below them. The floor trembled slightly, and Vivian's heart leapt into her throat. Without thinking, she grabbed Adrian's arm, pressing close to his side. "This way," he said firmly, one hand coming to rest protectively on her back, as he guided her toward what appeared to be a solid wall. His fingers found a hidden panel, and suddenly a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a reinforced metal door. "Quickly," Adrian urged, ushering her inside what was clearly a panic room. The space was roughly the size of her apartment's living room, with monitors, supplies, and what looked like a small command center. The heavy door sealed behind them with a pneumatic hiss. Vivian barely had time to process their new surroundings when the lights flickered once, twice, and then everything went dark. The absolute darkness was disorienting, making the small space feel both vast and suffocating. "Adrian!" she whispered into the pitch blackness, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm here," he answered, his voice coming from somewhere to her left. "Don't move. The backup systems should activate in a moment." But the seconds ticked by, and the darkness remained absolute. The only sounds were their breathing and the faint hum of the ventilation system. Vivian felt panic starting to build in her chest as the reality of their situation sank in. They were trapped in the dark, sealed inside a metal box in the sky, with no idea what danger lurked outside. The silence stretched between them like a physical thing, heavy with unspoken questions and growing fear. Vivian could feel Adrian's presence nearby, sense the tension radiating from him in waves. Whatever had triggered this security response, it was serious enough to genuinely worry a man who seemed to have planned for every contingency. And now they were locked in together, waiting in the darkness for whatever would happen next. The darkness seemed to press in around them until suddenly a soft click broke the silence. Adrian's footsteps echoed as he moved carefully across the room. "Stand back," he warned quietly. "I need to reach the manual override." Vivian heard him feeling along the wall, followed by the sound of a panel opening. A few seconds later, dim blue emergency lights flickered to life, revealing their sanctuary in an otherworldly glow. The panic room was smaller than she'd first imagined, maybe 15 feet by 12 feet, but efficiently organized. One wall held an array of monitors and communications equipment. Another featured storage cabinets and a small kitchenette setup. 2 narrow bunks were built into the third wall, with what looked like survival gear stowed beneath them. The space felt both reassuring and slightly claustrophobic. "I'm sorry about this," Adrian said, moving to the bank of monitors. His fingers flew across a keyboard as he accessed various security protocols. "The main system detected an unauthorized breach in our primary servers. Someone's trying to hack into Cross Industries' core network." Vivian wrapped her arms around herself, still shaken by how quickly everything had changed. "That crash we heard? Likely a diversionary tactic," Adrian explained, his voice tight with tension. "Create chaos in the building while attempting digital infiltration. The panic room engaged automatically when the breach was detected. It's designed to protect both our physical safety and sensitive company data." She moved closer to watch him work, careful not to touch any of the equipment. "How long until we can leave?" Adrian's shoulders tensed slightly. "The system auto-locks during cyber attacks to prevent any possibility of compromise. We'll remain sealed until the threat is fully resolved and security protocols are restored." He paused, glancing at her apologetically. It could be several hours. Hours? Vivian sank into one of the 2 chairs by the monitoring station. I should probably call someone, let them know I'm okay. Communications are locked down, Adrian said, frustration evident in his voice. They've managed to compromise our standard channels. I can't even reach Mason or the security team right now. The reality of their situation settled over them like a heavy blanket. They were truly cut off, trapped together in this metal box until whatever was happening outside resolved itself. As the hours crept by, they fell into an awkward pattern of small talk, punctuated by long silences. Vivian learned that Adrian had installed the panic room 5 years ago after a series of corporate threats. He showed her where to find water and emergency supplies, apologizing that the food options were limited to energy bars and MREs. You really prepared for everything, she observed, examining the fully stocked first aid cabinet. I've learned to expect the unexpected in this business, he replied, not looking up from the security logs he was studying. Though I admit I never anticipated having company in here. The comment hung in the air between them. Vivian found herself watching him as he worked, noting how his careful composure occasionally slipped, revealing flashes of worry and frustration. Here in this confined space, without his usual barriers, she caught glimpses of the man behind the billionaire facade. As evening approached, according to the digital clock, since they had no windows, exhaustion began to set in. The adrenaline from earlier had long since faded, leaving Vivian drained. She moved to the lower bunk, pulling her knees up to her chest and resting her chin on them. Adrian remained at the monitoring station, methodically checking and rechecking system data. The soft blue emergency lighting cast shadows across his face, highlighting the tension in his jaw. He'd removed his suit jacket hours ago, and his rolled-up sleeves revealed strong forearms as he typed. The gentle hum of air circulation and emergency power systems created a sort of white noise that made Vivian's eyelids grow heavy. She fought it at first, not wanting to appear vulnerable, but eventually the day's stress took its toll. As she drifted toward sleep, she was vaguely aware of Adrian's presence, the sound of his breathing, the tap of his fingers on keys, the rustle of fabric as he shifted in his chair. It was strange how his proximity had become almost comforting in their shared confinement. Her last conscious thought was wondering what tomorrow would bring, as the soft mechanical chorus of their high-tech shelter whispered around them like a lullaby. The emergency lights cast dancing shadows on the walls as Vivian finally succumbed to an uneasy sleep, while Adrian maintained his vigil at the monitors, guardian of their shared sanctuary in the sky. Vivian stirred from her restless sleep, momentarily disoriented by the unchanging blue-tinged glow of emergency lighting. Her neck ached from the awkward position she'd fallen asleep in, and it took several seconds for reality to settle back in. They were still trapped in Adrian's panic room. The digital clock on the wall displayed 6:15 in the morning, though without windows or natural light, time felt oddly abstract. She sat up on the narrow bunk, running her fingers through her tangled curls and trying to smooth her wrinkled clothes. Adrian was already awake. Or perhaps he hadn't slept at all. He'd removed his tie completely now, and his usually perfect hair showed signs of anxious fingers running through it. He noticed her stirring and turned from the monitoring station. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying the slight roughness of fatigue. "I hope you managed to get some rest." Vivian attempted a smile, though it felt strained. As much as anyone can on their first night in a panic room. She stretched, trying to work out the stiffness in her muscles. "Any change in the situation?" Adrian shook his head, frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. "The systems are still compromised. I've been trying to reach Mason every hour, but communications remain blocked." He stood and moved to one of the storage cabinets. "We should eat something. The options aren't exactly gourmet, but they're nutritionally complete. He retrieved 2 foil-wrapped packages and some bottled water, bringing them to the small table mounted to the wall. Vivian joined him, watching as he efficiently prepared what turned out to be military-style breakfast rations. Powdered eggs and something approximating hash browns. He explained apologetically. There's also instant coffee if you'd like some. They ate in silence, the food bland but filling. Vivian watched as Adrian made another attempt to contact his security team, his movements becoming increasingly tense with each failed try. The hours crept by with agonizing slowness. Vivian paced the limited space, counting steps to keep her mind occupied. 7 steps from wall to wall, 4 steps from bunks to monitoring station. The confines of their shelter seemed to shrink with each passing hour. By mid-morning, the feeling of helplessness became overwhelming. Vivian's chest felt tight, her breathing shallow. She pressed her forehead against the cool metal wall, trying to steady herself. I haven't felt this trapped since I was 8 years old, she whispered, not really meaning to speak aloud. Adrian looked up from the monitors. What happened when you were 8? Vivian turned, surprised by his interest. She hesitated, then slid down to sit, on the floor, her back against the wall. There was a fire in our apartment building. Mum was working a night shift at the hospital. I woke up to smoke and sirens. She wrapped her arms around her knees. I was too scared to move, just sat in my closet praying until the firefighters found me. Adrian's expression softened slightly. He turned his chair to face her fully, giving her his complete attention for the first time since they'd been locked in. That must have been terrifying, he said quietly. It was. But you know what got me through it? Faith. She smiled slightly at the memory. My mum always told me that faith was like a flashlight in the dark. It doesn't make the darkness go away, but it helps you find your way through it. Adrian was silent for a long moment, his fingers absently tracing patterns on the armrest of his chair. I used to have that kind of faith, he admitted, before everything went wrong. What happened? Vivian asked gently. He seemed to struggle with whether to answer, his usual guardedness warring with something else. Perhaps a need to finally speak the truth. Early in my career, I trusted the wrong person, someone I considered both a mentor and friend. His voice grew tight. He used that trust to try to destroy everything I'd built. Nearly succeeded too. Is that when the anxiety started? Adrian looked startled, then rueful. You noticed that? I'm an actress. Reading people is part of what I do. She offered a small smile. And you get this particular look in your eyes sometimes, like you're bracing for an attack that might come from anywhere. The betrayal left me with issues, he acknowledged. Panic attacks, trouble sleeping, the need to control everything I possibly can. He gestured to the panic room around them. Hence all this. Control is an illusion, though, isn't it? Vivian said softly. We're never really in control of anything except how we choose to face what comes our way. Adrian's expression shifted, something vulnerable flickering across his features. Your faith makes that easier. It gives me somewhere to put my fear, she explained, knowing that even when things feel hopeless, I'm not alone in it, that there's purpose even in the painful parts of the journey. A comfortable silence fell between them, the earlier tension softening into something more contemplative. Adrian resumed his work at the monitors, but his posture was less rigid now. Vivian found herself sharing more stories about her childhood, her dreams of acting, the way her mother's strength had shaped her own resilience. To her surprise, Adrian began offering his own memories in return, careful, measured glimpses into his past. She learned about his difficult relationship with his younger brother, The pressure of taking over the family business at 25. The loneliness of living in a world where every relationship came with ulterior motives. They settled into an almost comfortable routine of waiting and talking, the hours marked by regular security checks and shared ration meals. The conversation flowed more easily now, punctuated by occasional moments of unexpected humor. Just as they were starting to adjust to their strange situation, the emergency lights flickered ominously. Adrian immediately turned to the monitoring station, his fingers flying across the keyboard with renewed urgency. The lights flickered again, longer this time, casting strange shadows across their faces as they exchanged worried glances. Vivian felt her heart rate accelerate. "What's happening?" Adrian's expression was grim as he studied the readouts. Something's changed in the system. This could be bad. The lights continued their unsettling dance, each flicker a warning of deeper troubles ahead. As the third day in the panic room dawned, Vivian found herself settling into an unexpected rhythm with Adrian. The sterile space that had first felt like a prison now held a strange sort of comfort, filled with quiet conversations and shared moments that seemed to exist outside of their normal lives. "We should probably move around a bit," Vivian suggested after their morning ration bars. "Keep our muscles from getting too stiff." Adrian nodded, standing from his monitoring station. They began what had become their daily ritual, careful laps around the perimeter of the room, dodging the bunks and storage units in an awkward dance that sometimes made them bump into each other. "Sorry," Adrian mumbled after one such collision, his hand briefly steadying her elbow. "It's okay." Vivian smiled. "You know, this reminds me of this one awful audition where they crammed 15 actresses into this tiny waiting room. We were all trying to practice our choreography without hitting each other." "How did that go?" "Oh, terribly." She laughed. "I accidentally elbowed someone in the face. Didn't get the part, surprisingly enough." Adrian's lips twitched. "I can't imagine why." "Hey, at least I'm memorable, though maybe not always for the right reasons." Her smile faded slightly. "These past few years have been rough. Between failed auditions and Mum's medical bills." She trailed off, then shrugged. "But we get through it. She's doing better now, thank goodness." Adrian studied her face. "What's wrong with your mother?" "Lupus. It flared up badly last year. I had to choose between paying rent and paying for her treatments." Vivian's voice softened. "No choice at all, really. Mom's always been there for me, working double shifts when I needed dance lessons, encouraging me to keep trying even when everything felt impossible." "She sounds remarkable," Adrian said quietly. "She is." Vivian glanced at him. "What about your family?" Adrian's expression closed off slightly, but not completely, not like it would have days ago. "Complicated. My father was demanding, expected perfection. When he died, I inherited both the company and his enemies." He paused there, walking, leaning against the wall. "That's what's behind all these rumors and attacks, you know. My father's old rival, Maxwell Davidson, trying to destroy what's left of the Cross name." Vivian stopped beside him. "Is that why you needed the fake engagement? To counter his smear campaign?" "Partly." Adrian ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of stress. "Davidson's been spreading rumors that I'm unstable, unfit to lead, suggesting I drove my younger brother away with my controlling behavior. A stable relationship, a happy engagement. It would help counter that narrative." "Did you? Drive your brother away?" "No, yes, maybe." Adrian's shoulders slumped. "James always felt overshadowed, resented living in my shadow. When he left 5 years ago, he said he needed to find his own path. I haven't heard from him since." "I'm sorry." Vivian said softly, meaning it. The fourth day brought a lightness to their interactions that surprised them both. They were sharing another meal of ration bars when Vivienne started recounting her worst-ever acting job, playing a singing telegram delivery person at children's parties. So there I am, in this ridiculous costume, trying to sing Happy Birthday while this sugar-high 6-year-old is attempting to climb me like a tree, she explained, gesturing dramatically. And then his little sister decides to join in, except she's covered in cake frosting. A strange sound interrupted her story. It took her a moment to realize what it was. Adrian was laughing. Really laughing, his head thrown back, shoulders shaking. The sound transformed his entire face, erasing the worried lines and making him look younger, more open. "I don't think I've ever heard you laugh before," she said, smiling. Adrian's laughter faded to a soft chuckle. "I don't do it often," he admitted. "Haven't had much reason to lately." "That's a shame. You have a nice laugh." Their eyes met, and something warm passed between them. Vivian felt her cheeks heat slightly. "I was wrong about you, you know," she said after a moment. "When we first met, I thought you were just this cold, calculating businessman who needed arm candy for publicity. But you're not like that at all." "No." Adrian's voice was quiet. "No, you're—" She searched for the right words. "You're someone who carries too much weight on his shoulders. Someone who's been hurt but still tries to do the right thing." As evening settled in, marked by the dimming of the emergency lights into their night mode, they found themselves sitting side by side on the lower bunk. Their shoulders touched lightly as they talked in low voices about nothing and everything: childhood dreams, favorite books, the simple pleasures they missed from the outside world. Later, as Vivian lay in her bunk listening to Adrian's steady breathing from across the room, she realized something that should have frightened her, but didn't. She felt safe here. Safe with him. The thought followed her into dreams, a warm certainty in the darkness. Vivian woke slowly, her body still adjusting to the artificial day-night cycle of the panic room. The emergency lights had brightened to their daytime setting, casting a soft glow across the small space. As she blinked away sleep, a movement caught her eye. Adrian sat slumped in the desk chair, his normally perfect posture completely abandoned. His head tilted at an awkward angle, dark hair falling across his forehead. His breathing came in short, uneven bursts, his face twitching slightly, as if caught in an unsettling dream. She'd never seen him so unguarded. Without his carefully maintained facade, he looked younger, more vulnerable. The sight tugged at something in her chest. Moving quietly, she retrieved one of the thin blankets from her bunk and approached him. As she draped the blanket over his shoulders, she noticed the tension in his face, the way his hands gripped the armrests even in sleep. Whatever dreams haunted him weren't peaceful ones. Adrian stirred at her touch, eyes fluttering open. For a moment, confusion clouded his face. Then awareness rushed in, and he straightened abruptly, cheeks flushing. "I apologize," he said stiffly, fingers clutching the blanket. "I didn't mean to fall asleep here." "It's okay," Vivian said softly, "though that chair can't be comfortable." He rubbed his neck, wincing. "It's not, I just—" He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "I sometimes have trouble sleeping in small spaces, enclosed rooms." Understanding dawned. "Claustrophobia?" "Something like that." Adrian's fingers worried at the blanket's edge. "When I was 8, I got trapped in an elevator during a power outage, 6 hours alone in the dark." His voice grew quieter. "My father was furious when they finally got me out. Said I was being dramatic, that a cross doesn't show weakness." Vivian's heart ached at the pain in his voice. That must have been terrifying for a child. It was. He drew a shaky breath. Being in here, it brings it all back sometimes. The panic, the helplessness. She could see it building in him now, the quickening breath, the tension in his shoulders. Without thinking, she reached for his hand. "My grandmother taught me something that helps when I'm scared," she said. "Would you like to try it?" After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. "Close your eyes," she instructed gently. "Now, feel my hand in yours. Focus on that connection." His fingers tightened around hers. "I'm going to say a prayer my grandmother taught me, but you don't have to pray. Just listen to the words. Let them anchor you." In a soft, steady voice, she began, "Lord, grant me peace in the storm, strength in my weakness, and faith in the darkness. Help me remember that this moment will pass, that your love surrounds me always." She felt the trembling in his hand gradually still as she repeated the words. His breathing slowed, matching her rhythm. "Better?" she asked after a while. "Yes." His eyes opened, meeting hers with surprising warmth. "Thank you." Their hands remained joined, neither quite willing to break the connection. The moment stretched, filled with something delicate and unnamed. Finally, Adrian cleared his throat. "You mentioned your grandmother taught you that prayer?" "Mm-hmm. She was full of wisdom like that." Vivian settled cross-legged on the floor beside his chair, their hands still linked. "She's the one who first got me interested in theatre, actually. Used to take me to community productions, even when we could barely afford the tickets." "Is that where your dream of starting a non-profit theatre program came from?" "You remember me mentioning that?" She smiled, surprised. "But yes, I want to give other kids what my grandmother gave me, a chance to discover themselves through storytelling, to build confidence, find their voice." She sighed. "Right now I teach drama workshops at a community center when I can, but I dream of something bigger. A real program with proper funding that could reach more children." "That's a beautiful dream," Adrian said quietly. "You'd be good at it. I've seen how naturally you connect with people, how you make them feel safe." Heat crept into her cheeks at the compliment. "What about you? What dreams are you carrying?" Adrian was silent for a long moment. "I dream of fixing things with James, my brother." His voice grew heavy with regret. "The last time we spoke, he accused me of trying to control his life, just like our father did. Said he needed to escape the Cross legacy." He swallowed hard. "I've tried to find him, but he doesn't want to be found." "You miss him?" "Every day." Adrian's thumb traced absent patterns on her palm. "Sometimes I wonder if he was right, if I've become exactly what our father wanted, at the cost of everything else." "I don't believe that," Vivian said firmly. "The man I've gotten to know these past few days, he cares deeply, maybe too much sometimes. That's very different from being controlling." Their conversation continued as evening approached, voices growing softer as the emergency lights dimmed. They shared more stories, childhood memories, secret hopes, quiet fears, until exhaustion began to creep in. They moved to their separate bunks, but instead of turning away as they had previous nights, they faced each other across the small space. The soft blue glow of the emergency lights cast gentle shadows between them. "Good night, Adrian," Vivian murmured, watching his features soften with approaching sleep. "Good night, Vivian," he replied, his voice carrying a warmth that followed her into dreams. The morning of day 6 began like the others, with the artificial dawn of emergency lighting and the soft hum of air circulation. But everything changed when Adrian noticed something unusual in the system logs. Vivian was stretching her stiff muscles when she heard his sharp intake of breath. "What is it?" Adrian's fingers flew across the emergency console's keyboard, his face growing increasingly tense. "This doesn't make sense. The security breach, it wasn't random." She moved closer, peering over his shoulder at the scrolling text. "What do you mean?" "Someone deliberately compromised the building's security protocols exactly 8 minutes before you arrived for our meeting." His voice was tight with controlled anger. "They knew when you'd be here. They were waiting." The implications hit Vivian like a physical blow. "Are you saying someone wanted us trapped in here?" "Yes." Adrian ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "And I'm starting to think your involvement in all of this, the contract, the fake engagement, wasn't coincidental." Vivian sank into the spare chair, her legs suddenly weak. "They chose me. But why?" "Leverage." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Someone wanted to ensure they had an innocent person involved. Someone I'd feel responsible for protecting." The room seemed to shrink around her as fear crept in. "So even before I walked into your penthouse, you were already in danger." Adrian turned to face her, his expression fierce with determination. "I swear to you, Vivian, I will find out who did this, and I will keep you safe." She nodded, trying to steady her breathing. "I believe you." Over the next 2 days, they worked together to try bypassing the panic room's lockdown. Adrian taught Vivian the basics of the emergency console, explaining each system with patience, despite their growing frustration. "See this sequence here?" He pointed to a line of code. "It's supposed to allow manual override in case of system failure, but someone's modified the authentication protocols." Vivian leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. "So even with your authorization codes, we're still locked out." He sighed. "They were thorough. At least the food's still good." She quipped, trying to lighten the mood as she unwrapped another ration bar. Adrian made a face at the protein bar in his hand. "I wouldn't go that far." "Oh, please," she laughed, grateful for the moment of levity. "You're just spoiled. I've seen you eyeing those peanut butter ones like they personally offended you." "They're unnecessarily sweet," he protested, but a smile tugged at his lips. "Says the man who I caught adding 3 sugar packets to his emergency coffee yesterday." "That's different." His attempt at dignity was undermined by the twinkle in his eyes. "Coffee requires proper preparation." "Uh-huh." She grinned, bumping his shoulder playfully. "Whatever helps you sleep at night, Mr. Cross." These lighter moments helped balance the growing tension, as each attempted override failed. They developed a routine, working on the system in shifts, taking breaks to walk the small space, sharing stories to keep their spirits up. During one late-night attempt, Vivian noticed Adrian's hands shaking slightly as he typed. Without comment, she began softly reciting her grandmother's prayer. He smiled gratefully, his fingers steadying as her voice filled the space between them. By the morning of day 8, exhaustion had settled deep in their bones. Vivienne was dozing in her bunk when a sudden violent jolt yanked her awake. The whole room shuddered, and something heavy thudded above them. "Adrian!" She sat up, heart pounding. He was already at the console, scanning readouts. "Something's happening in the penthouse." Another crash echoed above them, followed by the distinct sound of footsteps. "Someone's up there," Vivian whispered, moving closer to Adrian. They stood together, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening to the muffled activity overhead. Adrian's arm slipped protectively around her shoulders as another jolt shook the room. "Whatever happens," he said softly, "stay close to me." She nodded, her hand finding his free one and holding tight. The footsteps continued above them, and they waited, 2 hearts beating in shared rhythm for whatever would come next. The violent shaking subsided as suddenly as it had begun, leaving Vivienne and Adrian tense with anticipation. The emergency console lit up with new data streams, and Adrian's expression brightened momentarily. "External security teams," he explained, scanning the readouts. "They're attempting a system reboot from outside. This could be our way out." Vivienne felt hope flutter in her chest. Really? But before Adrian could respond, the console screen flickered once, twice, then went completely dark. Around them, the main lighting system powered down with an ominous hum, leaving only the dim glow of emergency backup lights. "No, no, no," Adrian muttered, his fingers flying over the now unresponsive keyboard. "This isn't right. The reboot should have triggered the release protocols." Vivienne wrapped her arms around herself, fighting back a shiver as the temperature began to drop. "What's happening?" "The system's shutting down further instead of rebooting." Adrian's voice carried an edge of frustration. "We're losing auxiliary power now too." The emergency lights cast eerie blue shadows across their faces as they huddled closer together, seeking warmth and comfort in proximity. Hours crawled by with no improvement, and as night fell on day 9, the darkness seemed to press in around them like a physical presence. Adrian paced the small space, his usually composed demeanor cracking. I can't keep doing this." Vivienne looked up from a bunk, concerned by the raw emotion in his voice. "Adrian." He stopped pacing, bracing himself against the wall. "Do you know what it's like? Having thousands of people depending on you, watching your every move, waiting for you to fail?" The words seemed to burst from him, as if a dam had finally broken. "Everyone wants something. Everyone needs decisions, answers, solutions. I built this empire from nothing, and now it's like this. This weight crushing me, every single day." Vivienne stood slowly, moving closer as he continued. "The loneliness is the worst part," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Being surrounded by people but never really connecting with any of them. Always wondering if they see me or just my bank account, if they care about Adrian or just what Mr. Cross can do for them." His shoulders slumped. "I thought I could handle it. The isolation, the pressure, all of it. But lately I've been so tired of pretending to be this perfect, untouchable figure everyone expects." Vivienne reached out, gently touching his arm. "You don't have to pretend with me." He turned to face her, vulnerability raw in his eyes. "That's just it, isn't it? In here, with you. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe, like I can just be myself." The confession hung between them in the dim light. Vivienne's heart pounded as she gathered her courage to speak. "I need to tell you something too," she said softly. "When I took this contract, I thought it would be simple. Just acting. Just another role to play." She swallowed hard. "But being here with you, seeing the real Adrian beneath all those careful walls, I'm feeling things I never meant to feel." Adrian's breath caught. "Vivienne, I know it's crazy," she continued, her voice trembling slightly. "We barely know each other. This whole situation is impossible. But every time you smile, every time you let me see a little more of who you really are, I fall a little deeper." The silence that followed was electric with unspoken emotion. Adrian moved closer, his hand finding hers in the darkness. "I've been fighting it," he admitted quietly. "These feelings, telling myself it wasn't real, that it couldn't be real." His fingers intertwined with hers. "But I can't fight it anymore." Vivienne felt herself drawn towards him, like a leaf caught in a gentle current. His free hand came up to cup her cheek, and she leaned into the touch, her eyes fluttering closed. The first brush of his lips against hers was hesitant, questioning. She responded with equal gentleness, her hand coming to rest on his chest where she could feel his heart racing to match her own. The kiss deepened slowly, tenderly, a careful exploration of newfound trust and connection. When they finally parted, Adrian rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing softly in the darkness. No words were needed. Everything important had already been said in that kiss. They spent the rest of the night talking in quiet voices, sharing hopes and dreams they'd never dared speak aloud before. Adrian spoke of his estranged brother, of wanting to heal that broken relationship. Vivienne described her vision for a community theatre program that would give disadvantaged kids a chance to find their voice through art. As dawn approached on day 10, they had drifted to sleep on the lower bunk, Adrian's arm protectively around Vivienne's waist, her head tucked against his chest. The sound of mechanical whirring startled them awake. A series of clicks and beeps echoed through the room, and then, with a prolonged hiss, the panic room door began to unlock. Fresh air rushed in, carrying with it the promise of freedom and an uncertain future. They stood together, hands still linked, watching as the door slowly opened. Sunlight spilled into the room for the first time in over a week, and with it came the realization that whatever happened next, nothing between them would ever be the same. The door to freedom swung open with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor filled with security personnel. Mason Reed, Adrian's head of security, stood at the front, his usually stoic face showing visible relief. "Mr. Cross, Miss Cole," he said firmly. "We need to move quickly. The building is secure now, but there's significant media presence outside." Vivienne blinked rapidly as they stepped into the hallway's bright fluorescent lighting. After 10 days of dim emergency lights, even these felt harsh and overwhelming. Adrian's hand remained steady at the small of her back, grounding her as they walked. "The elevator's been thoroughly checked," Mason assured them, leading the way. "We have teams stationed on every floor between here and the lobby." Inside the elevator, Vivienne caught her reflection in the polished walls and barely recognized herself. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair was messier than usual, and her eyes held a new depth she couldn't quite explain. Adrian stood close beside her, his own appearance similarly disheveled, though something in his stance remained protective. As they descended, Mason briefed them on the situation. "The cyber attack has been traced to an external source. We're still gathering evidence, but it appears to have been a coordinated effort." He glanced at Adrian. "The board is expecting a full report tomorrow." The elevator doors opened to reveal the lobby transformed into a command center. Security personnel moved with purpose, speaking into headsets and monitoring tablets. Through the glass front doors, Vivienne could see the crowd of reporters gathering, their cameras already flashing. "Miss Cole, we have a car waiting at the side entrance," Mason explained. "Mr. Cross, yours is at the rear. It's safer to separate for now." Vivienne felt Adrian tense beside her. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Are you sure you'll be all right?" he asked softly, his eyes searching hers. She managed a small smile. "I'll be fine. Go handle what you need to handle." For a moment, it seemed like he might say more, but the professional mask slipped back into place. With a final nod, he turned toward the rear exit, flanked by security. Mason personally escorted Vivienne to her car. The side door opened to reveal the sun setting against Atlanta's skyline, painting the buildings in brilliant oranges and pinks. The sight stopped her in her tracks. Somehow, impossibly, the world had continued turning while they were trapped. Traffic still flowed. People still walked their dogs. Life had gone on completely unchanged. A camera flash brought her back to reality. Despite the side entrance being supposedly secure, a few determined reporters had found their way there. Their questions overlapped in a cacophony. "Miss Cole, how did you end up in the panic room? Is it true you're really engaged to Adrian Cross? Was this a publicity stunt? Mason's team formed a barrier between her and the press as she hurried to the waiting car. Once inside, she sank into the leather seats, her heart pounding. The driver, another member of Adrian's security team, pulled away smoothly, leaving the chaos behind. The ride to her apartment felt surreal. Streetlights flickered on as dusk deepened into night. People walked past on the sidewalks, laughing, talking on phones, living their normal lives. Vivian pressed her forehead against the cool window, trying to process everything. 10 days ago, she'd walked into that penthouse as an actress playing a part. Now she was leaving with her heart full of feelings she'd never expected to develop. The memory of Adrian's kiss lingered, along with the vulnerability in his voice when he'd finally opened up to her. The car stopped outside her building, and the driver insisted on walking her to her door. Inside her tiny studio apartment, everything looked exactly as she'd left it. The stack of unpaid bills on the counter, her script pages scattered across the bed, the small potted plant struggling on the windowsill. Exhaustion hit her suddenly. She managed to shower and change into clean pajamas before collapsing onto her bed. The familiar springs creaked beneath her, so different from the firm bunk in the panic room. Her phone showed dozens of missed calls and messages, but she couldn't bring herself to look at them yet. Across town, Adrian stood in his penthouse, now cleared by security and restored to its pristine state. The cleaning crew had erased all traces of their 10-day confinement, but he could still feel echoes of those moments everywhere he looked. He walked to the panel that concealed the panic room entrance, running his hand over the smooth surface. Inside that small space, he'd found something he didn't even know he was missing, a connection that went beyond business deals and corporate strategies. Pulling out his phone, he started typing, "I hope you made it home safely. I wanted to say..." He stared at the unfinished message, then slowly deleted it. What could he possibly say that wouldn't sound hollow after everything they'd shared? Late into the night, both Vivian and Adrian lay awake in their separate beds, minds replaying the same memories. The way she'd calmed him during his anxiety attack, the sound of her laugh when he'd fumbled with the ration packets, the quiet conversations that had stripped away their carefully constructed facades. Vivian curled onto her side, hugging her pillow close. In the panic room, everything had felt clear. Their connection, their growing feelings, the possibility of something real. But now, back in the real world with all its complications and expectations, uncertainty crept in like shadows at sunset. Miles away, Adrian stared at his ceiling, his vast penthouse feeling emptier than ever before. The memory of Vivian's head resting against his chest, their fingers intertwined, haunted him. He'd built his empire on careful control and emotional distance. Now, for the first time, he wasn't sure if he could, or wanted to, maintain those walls. The city lights twinkled beyond their windows as they both lay awake, separated by distance, but connected by the weight of unspoken words and the lingering question of what tomorrow would bring. Vivian woke to the insistent buzz of her phone vibrating against her nightstand. Sunlight streamed through her thin curtains, creating patterns on her worn carpet. For a moment, she felt disoriented. The space around her seemed too large after 10 days in the panic room. Her phone showed 327 missed calls, 452 text messages, and over 1,000 social media notifications. The numbers made her head spin. Local news stations, entertainment blogs, even national media outlets were desperate for comment. Friends she hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to catch up. Her agent had called 15 times. "This is crazy," she whispered, scrolling through the messages. People she'd worked with at the diner were sharing wild theories online. Some claimed she'd been kidnapped. Others insisted it was a calculated publicity move. A few suggested a secret romance gone wrong. Her mother's worried voice filled her voicemail. "Baby, please call me as soon as you can. I'm seeing all sorts of things on the news, and I need to know you're okay." Vivian's hands shook as she dialed her mother's number. "Mama? I'm okay, I promise." "Thank God. What happened? They're saying all kinds of things about you and that billionaire." "It was just a security lockdown," Vivian explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "We got stuck in his panic room when the building's systems were compromised, that's all." "For 10 days? Her mother's skepticism was clear. "With Adrian Cross?" "Yes, Mama. It wasn't what people are saying." But what was it? The question haunted her as she ended the call and opened her laptop. Headlines screamed across every news site. "Billionaire and actress trapped for 10 days. Scandal or strategy?" Cross Industries silent on penthouse incident. "Who is Vivian Cole, unknown actress at center of corporate drama?" A notification popped up. Adrian's corporate communications team had released a statement. "Cross Industries confirms that due to a security systems malfunction, CEO Adrian Cross and associate Vivian Cole were temporarily confined to a secure location within the building. Both parties are safe and unharmed. We are conducting a thorough investigation into the incident. No further comments will be made at this time." The carefully worded statement seemed to only fuel speculation. Comments sections filled with wild theories and accusations. Some questioned her character, suggesting she'd orchestrated the whole thing for fame. Others painted her as a victim in some elaborate corporate scheme. Vivian closed her laptop, feeling sick. She needed to get out, to do something normal. But when she tried to leave for groceries, photographers were waiting outside her building. She retreated inside, ordering delivery instead. Her phone rang again, Adrian's private number. Her heart jumped. "Hello." Her voice came out softer than intended. "Vivian." Adrian's familiar voice carried none of the warmth from their last night in the panic room. "I wanted to check that you're safe. The media attention is unfortunate." "I'm okay, just overwhelmed." She paused, wondering if he could hear the unspoken questions in her voice. "How are you handling it?" "Managing." His professional tone felt like a wall between them. "My team is investigating the incident. Early findings suggest internal involvement. A board member may have orchestrated the system failure." "Someone did this on purpose?" The thought made her stomach clench. "It appears so. I'll make sure you're protected if anything develops." He hesitated. "Vivian, about what happened. We don't have to talk about it," she said quickly, though her chest ached. It was an intense situation. People get caught up in moments like that. The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken words. "Take care of yourself, Vivian." "You too, Adrian." The call ended, leaving her feeling more alone than before. She moved through her apartment like a ghost, trying to recapture some sense of normalcy. The community center had given her time off. Understanding the media circus made teaching impossible right now. As evening approached, she forced herself to cook. Something simple, just pasta with sauce from a jar. So different from the ration packs they'd shared, making jokes about the bland flavors. The memory of Adrian's rare laugh made her chest tight. She ate alone at her small table, the city lights twinkling beyond her window. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications, but she ignored them. Instead, she found herself thinking about Adrian's confession in the darkness of the panic room, about the way his hands had trembled when he finally let his guard down. A new email notification caught her eye, a link to an article from a major news outlet. Against her better judgment, she clicked it. The headline made her heart sink. Panic room romance, inside the publicity stunt shaking Cross Industries. The article painted her as an ambitious actress who had orchestrated the whole incident for fame. They'd dug up every failed audition, every small role, every struggle in her career. Anonymous sources questioned her integrity, her motives, her character. Vivian set her phone down, her dinner growing cold. Somewhere across the city, in his penthouse high above Atlanta, Adrian was probably reading the same article. She wondered if he believed it, if the tender moments they'd shared were already fading like a dream in the harsh light of reality. The city hummed outside her window, life moving forward as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and Vivian didn't know how to navigate this new world where the truth lived in the space between headlines and heartbeats. The morning sun cast long shadows across Adrian's desk as he stared at the computer screen, his jaw tightening with each line of code he read. The evidence was irrefutable. His cybersecurity team had worked through the night, tracing the digital fingerprints that led straight to Gregory Hale's private server. Lines of encrypted communications, timestamps matching the security breach, authorization codes that could only have come from a board member's access level. It was all there, documented in cold, precise detail. Adrian's hands clenched into fists as he scrolled through the data. Gregory had orchestrated everything. The initial security threats, the system shutdown, the panic room malfunction. He'd meant to trap Adrian alone, but Vivian's presence had been an unexpected variable in his calculated plan. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Hale has arrived for the 9 o'clock meeting." Adrian pressed the button. "Send him in." Gregory Hale strode into the office with his usual air of polished confidence. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his expensive suit without a wrinkle. He smiled, showing teeth that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Adrian, good morning. I trust you're recovered from your unfortunate confinement." Adrian stood slowly, his voice measured. "Sit down, Gregory." Something in his tone made Gregory's smile falter slightly, but he lowered himself into the chair across from Adrian's desk. "We have a problem," Adrian said, turning his monitor so Gregory could see the screen. "Would you like to explain these server logs?" Gregory's face remained carefully neutral. "I'm afraid I don't follow. Technical details aren't my forte." "Let me simplify it then." Adrian's voice carried an edge of steel. "Our investigation shows that someone with board-level access initiated the security breach. Someone who knew exactly how to trigger the panic room protocols. Someone who wanted me trapped and discredited." "Serious accusations," Gregory said smoothly. "But surely you're not suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything." Adrian pulled up another screen of data. "I'm stating facts. Your private server, your authorization codes, your digital signature, Gregory." A muscle twitched in Gregory's jaw, but his voice remained steady. "This is absurd. Anyone could have hacked my credentials. I've been nothing but loyal to this company for 20 years. 20 years of watching someone younger take the position you thought should be yours." Adrian leaned forward. 20 years of resentment, waiting for your chance? You have no proof that would stand up in court. "Don't I?" Adrian pressed a button on his desk phone. "Send in the security team." Gregory's composure cracked slightly as two security officers entered the office. "You're making a mistake, Adrian. The board won't stand for this kind of accusation against one of their own. The board has already seen the evidence. They're meeting now to vote on your removal." Adrian nodded to the security officers. "Please escort Mr. Hale from the building. His access has been revoked." As Gregory was led out, his mask of sophistication finally slipped. "You think you've won? Wait until the media hears about this. Your little actress won't be able to hide from the spotlight now." Adrian's blood ran cold at the threat to Vivian, but he kept his expression neutral until the door closed behind them. Across town, Vivian sat in her apartment, staring at her phone in disbelief. The casting director's message was polite. but firm. "Given the recent publicity, we've decided to go in a different direction." She scrolled through her social media notifications, each one worse than the last. Anonymous accounts called her a gold digger, an attention seeker, a fraud. Entertainment blogs questioned her acting credentials, suggesting she'd orchestrated the whole incident as a publicity stunt. "She's nobody." One comment read, "Just trying to sleep her way into headlines." "Bet she disabled the security system herself." Another speculated, "Probably thought trapping herself with a billionaire would make her famous." Vivian closed the apps, her hands shaking. She'd worked so hard, for so long, building her career piece by piece. Now it was crumbling because of something completely beyond her control. Her phone buzzed, Adrian's number. She hesitated before answering. "Vivian." His voice sounded strained, exhausted. "We found out who was behind the attack." She sat up straighter. "Who?" "Gregory Hale, one of my board members. He—" Adrian paused, and she could hear him taking a deep breath. "He orchestrated everything. The security breach, the lockdown, all of it. He wanted to force me out of the company, and he didn't care who got hurt in the process." "Why?" Vivian asked softly, though she already knew the answer. Power, money, ambition, the usual culprits. "Years of resentment, I suppose." Adrian's voice grew heavy with regret. "Vivian, I'm so sorry. You should never have been caught in the middle of this. Your career, your reputation." "It's not your fault," she said, even as another notification popped up. Another lost opportunity, another door closing. "I've seen the things they're saying about you online, the opportunities you're losing." His voice cracked slightly. "You trusted me, and I led you into danger." Vivian closed her eyes, remembering the warmth of his arms around her in the darkness of the panic room. The way he'd opened up to her, shown her his true self. Now it felt like that connection was slipping away, replaced by guilt and fear. "Adrian, I'll make this right," he said firmly, "whatever it takes." After they hung up, Vivian sat in the growing darkness of her apartment, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears. She wanted to trust in the connection they'd formed, but the world seemed determined to tear it apart. In his office high above the city, Adrian stood at the window, watching the sun set over Atlanta. His phone still felt warm from their conversation, but his heart felt cold with resolve. The evidence against Gregory would protect his company, but it wouldn't shield Vivian from the public fallout. He looked down at the city lights beginning to twinkle on, remembering how they'd looked from the panic room's small window, how Vivian's eyes had shone in the dim emergency lighting, how real everything had felt in that confined space, away from the world's judgments and expectations. But reality had crashed back in, harsh and unforgiving. Gregory's threats echoed in his mind. The media wouldn't let this go. They'd dig deeper, twist the story further, tear Vivienne's life apart looking for scandal. Unless he gave them a different story. Unless he did what he'd always done, protect others by keeping them at a distance. Adrian turned away from the window, his decision settling like a weight in his chest. To protect Vivian, he would have to let her go. Push her away before the world could hurt her more than it already had, even if it meant breaking both their hearts in the process. The morning sun cast long shadows across Atlanta's skyline as Vivian's phone lit up with a message from Adrian. Her heart skipped when she read his request to meet at the Cross Industries rooftop garden. After everything that had happened, she didn't know what to expect. The elevator doors opened to reveal a breathtaking space filled with carefully tended flowers and small trees. Adrian stood near the edge, his tall frame silhouetted against the early evening sky. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and Vivian's breath caught at the pain in his eyes. "Thank you for coming." he said softly, gesturing to a quiet corner where comfortable chairs waited beside a small fountain. The gentle sound of flowing water couldn't mask the tension in the air. Vivian sat down, smoothing her simple blue dress with trembling hands. "Adrian, what's wrong?" He remained standing, his fingers gripping the back of his chair. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened. The sabotage, the media circus, the impact on your career." He paused, swallowing hard. "I can't let this continue." "What do you mean?" Vivian's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Every day you're associated with me puts you at greater risk. The media won't stop digging. Gregory's supporters won't stop attacking. Your reputation, your dreams, they're all being destroyed because of me." Vivian stood up, reaching for his hand. "Adrian, please. What happened in the panic room, what we shared, that was real. We can face this together." He stepped back, though she could see how much it cost him. "That's exactly why I have to end this now. The longer we maintain any connection, the worse it will get for you. I've already seen 3 more casting directors blacklist you this morning." Tears welled in Vivian's eyes. "I don't care about that. We found something special in that room, something true. And that truth will destroy everything you've worked for." Adrian's voice cracked. "You told me about your dreams, Vivian. The theater program for kids, the roles you want to play, the difference you want to make. None of that can happen if you're branded as the gold digger who trapped a billionaire." "That's not fair," she whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. "No, it's not, but it's reality." Adrian finally met her eyes, and the anguish there made her heart ache. "I've seen this pattern before. The media, the corporate vultures, they won't stop until they've torn apart everything good and pure about you. I won't let that happen." A warm breeze rustled through the garden, carrying the scent of jasmine. Somewhere below, car horns honked, and life went on, oblivious to the hearts breaking above. "So that's it?" Vivian asked, her voice thick with unshed tears. "You're just going to push me away to protect me?" Adrian's hands clenched at his sides. "My security team will escort you home. They'll ensure you're safe until this dies down." He turned away, his shoulders rigid. "The official statement will say our arrangement ended amicably. Your final payment has been transferred, plus a considerable bonus for the damages caused." "I don't want your money!" Vivian cried out. "I want—" "Please!" Adrian cut her off, his voice raw. "Don't make this harder than it already is." 2 security guards appeared at the garden entrance, waiting quietly. Vivian stared at Adrian's back, remembering how he'd held her in the darkness, how they'd shared their deepest fears and hopes. Now it felt like those moments were slipping away like sand through her fingers. "Goodbye, Adrian," she managed to say, her voice breaking on his name. He didn't turn around, didn't move as she walked away. The security team flanked her in the elevator, their presence a stark reminder of how quickly everything had changed. The ride home passed in a blur. Vivian barely registered thanking the guards or unlocking her apartment door. She stumbled inside, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto her bed. Only then did she let the sobs come, burying her face in her pillow to muffle the sound of her heart breaking. Miles away, Adrian walked through his vast penthouse, each room haunted by memories of Vivian. The kitchen, where they'd shared ration bars and laughter. The living room, where she'd helped him through an anxiety attack. The wall panel that led to the panic room where everything had changed. He paused at the windows, pressing his forehead against the cool glass. The city lights blurred through his tears, but he didn't wipe them away. This pain was his penance for dragging an innocent soul into his dangerous world. In her apartment, Vivian curled around her pillow, her tears soaking the fabric. The night grew deeper, but sleep wouldn't come. All she could think about was Adrian's face when he'd first kissed her, the warmth in his eyes when he'd listened to her dreams, the gentle way he'd held her hand during their last night in the panic room. Adrian stood in his darkened bedroom, unable to lie down in the bed that still felt too large, too empty. He could almost hear Vivienne's soft voice telling stories about her childhood, her infectious laugh echoing through his memory. The weight of his decision pressed down on his chest until he could barely breathe. Neither of them slept that night. They lay awake in their separate spaces, connected only by shared memories and the ache of what could have been. The city hummed on around them, indifferent to their pain, while two hearts beat in lonely rhythm, grieving for a love sacrificed to protection and fear. Morning light filtered through Vivienne's thin curtains, casting pale shadows across her untouched breakfast. 5 days had passed since the rooftop garden, each one a struggle to find normalcy again. She pulled herself from the kitchen chair, knowing she couldn't be late for her volunteer shift at the community center. The walk helped clear her head. Children's laughter drifted from the playground as she approached the worn brick building. Inside, the familiar scent of craft supplies and old books wrapped around her like a comforting hug. "Miss Vivian!" 8-year-old Destiny ran up, pigtails bouncing. "Are we doing drama games today?" Vivian managed her first genuine smile in days. "You bet we are! Go gather everyone in the circle." Soon, 12 children sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes bright with anticipation. Vivian led them through theater exercises, teaching them to project their voices and express emotions through movement. When little Marcus, usually so shy, stood up and delivered his lines without stumbling, the pride in his face made her heart swell. "That was perfect, Marcus," she praised, high-fiving him. "You're becoming quite the actor." During their snack break, Vivian sat with Miss Eleanor, one of the regular senior volunteers who helped with after-school programs. "Child, you're looking thin," Eleanor observed, pushing a homemade cookie toward her. "Martha and I are bringing you dinner tonight. No arguments. You really don't have to. Hush now." Eleanor patted her hand. "We've all been through heartbreak. Sometimes the healing starts with a good casserole and better company." That evening, Eleanor and Martha arrived at Vivienne's apartment, bearing warm dishes and weathered wisdom. The scent of Martha's famous chicken casserole filled the small space as they settled around her tiny table. "I was 23 when my first love broke my heart," Martha shared, spooning extra vegetables onto Vivienne's plate. "Thought the world was ending, but looking back now, that pain led me straight to my Harold. 52 years we had together before he passed." Eleanor nodded sagely. "The good Lord has a way of using our broken pieces to build something beautiful. You just keep showing up, keep loving those children, keep believing." They prayed together before leaving, their aged hands warm around Vivienne's trembling ones. Their faith wrapped around her like a blanket, easing some of the ache in her chest. Across town, Adrian sat in his darkened office, security footage playing on his computer screen. He'd watched it dozens of times. Vivian in the panic room, teaching him breathing exercises, her face illuminated by emergency lights as she told stories about her grandmother. "Sir." His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "The board meeting started 5 minutes ago." Adrian quickly closed the footage. "On my way." The meeting dragged endlessly, Gregory Hale's smug face at the far end of the table, making Adrian's jaw clench. Though evidence was mounting against Hale, nothing was concrete enough for legal action yet. That night, like every night since the separation, Adrian avoided his penthouse. He worked until his vision blurred, trying to exhaust himself enough to sleep without dreaming of Vivian's smile. The next afternoon, Vivian led the community center kids through a simple scene from Charlotte's Web. 10-year-old Jasmine played Charlotte with such sweetness that several parents wiped away tears. "Miss Vivian?" Jasmine approached after practice. "Are you sad? You look sad sometimes when you think nobody's watching." Vivian's throat tightened. "Sometimes grown-ups get sad too, but helping you all with your acting makes me happy. When I'm sad, my grandma says to pray and keep doing good things. She says the sad gets smaller that way." A fresh wave of elderly neighbors arrived that evening. Rose with her cornbread, Beatrice with soup, and Gloria with chocolate cake. They filled her apartment with stories of their own heartbreaks and triumphs, wrapping her in the warmth of their hard-earned wisdom. "My Thomas left me for his secretary," Gloria revealed, cutting generous slices of cake. "I thought I'd die from the pain. Instead, I started volunteering at the hospital. Met my second husband there. 43 wonderful years before cancer took him. Point is, sometimes the worst pain pushes us right where we need to be." Meanwhile, Adrian watched the sun set from his office window. His phone buzzed, another urgent message about company matters. But his mind was stuck on Vivienne's last words in the garden, the hurt in her eyes as she walked away. On the 5th night after their separation, everything changed. Adrian's phone exploded with alerts just as he was leaving the office. A whistleblower had released documents, thousands of them, proving Gregory Hale's involvement in the cyber attack. Email trails, banking transactions, hired hackers. It was all there, including evidence that Hale had specifically targeted Vivian, planting false information to make her appear suspicious. Across town, Vivian's phone chimed with a news alert. Her hands shook as she read the headline: "Cross Industries board member exposed in cyber attack scandal." Then, moments later, a text message appeared. "You've been cleared. Everything is coming out tonight." She sat heavily on her couch, press notifications flooding her phone as the story broke across all major networks. Gregory Hale's face appeared on her television screen, being led from Cross Industries in handcuffs. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashed, and somewhere in the chaos, justice began to unfold. The simple message blinked on her phone screen, promising vindication, but offering no hint of what might come next. Vivian held the phone to her chest, closed her eyes, and whispered a prayer of gratitude as tears slid down her cheeks. The morning sun crept through Vivian's apartment window, finding her curled up on the couch where she'd fallen asleep watching the news. Her phone buzzed continuously with notifications, messages, and calls, a stark contrast to the silence of recent days. She blinked at the television screen, now showing a different kind of headline. Actress Vivian Cole cleared. Board members' sabotage exposed. The morning shows were running clips from last night's breaking news, showing Gregory Hale's arrest and the flood of evidence against him. "In a stunning development," one reporter announced, documents reveal an elaborate scheme targeting both Adrian Cross and actress Vivian Cole. Sources confirm Hale orchestrated the cyber attack that trapped the pair in Cross Industries' panic room for 10 days. Her agent called first. "Vivian, honey, this is huge. The casting director from that project that dropped you. She called personally to apologize. They want you back." Vivian's hands trembled as she poured her morning coffee. Her social media feeds, recently filled with cruel accusations, now overflowed with apologies and support. Her neighbor Martha knocked on the door, bringing fresh muffins and tears of joy. "I knew you were telling the truth, child." Martha hugged her tight. Sometimes the Lord lets the truth take its time, but it always comes to light. At 11 o'clock sharp, every major network cut to a live feed from Cross Industries. The company's sprawling headquarters gleamed in the morning sun as reporters gathered in the main atrium. Security teams lined the walls, their presence a reminder of recent threats. Vivian's heart jumped when Adrian appeared on screen. He looked different, his usual pristine suit slightly rumpled, his face showing signs of sleepless nights. He approached the podium without notes, something she'd never seen him do before. "Good morning," he began, his voice carrying none of its usual corporate polish. "I stand before you today not as the CEO of Cross Industries, but as a man who needs to speak truth." The room fell silent. Vivian leaned closer to her television, coffee forgotten in her hands. Yesterday evening, evidence emerged proving that Gregory Hale, a trusted member of our board, orchestrated a cyber attack against this company. His actions endangered lives, damaged reputations, and betrayed the trust of everyone at Cross Industries. Adrian paused, his hands gripping the podium. But Mr. Hale's greatest crime was his deliberate targeting of an innocent woman, Vivian Cole. Hearing her name from his lips made Vivian's heart stutter. She set down her coffee with shaking hands. "Miss Cole entered my life through a business arrangement, yes. But what happened during those 10 days in the panic room?" His voice wavered. "What happened was real. She showed extraordinary courage, grace, and kindness. When panic and claustrophobia threatened to overwhelm me, she taught me to breathe again. When darkness seemed absolute, her faith lit the way." Tears welled in Vivian's eyes as she watched Adrian's composed facade crumble. "The truth is," he continued, his voice cracking, "Vivian Cole saved my life, not just physically but in spirit and truth. She showed me what real strength looks like, what faith looks like, what—" he paused, swallowing hard, "what love looks like." The reporters stirred, cameras clicking rapidly. "And I failed her." Adrian's admission echoed through the atrium. "When the truth about Hale's sabotage was still unclear, I pushed her away. I told myself it was for her protection, but I was acting out of fear. Fear of the depth of my feelings. Fear of being truly known. Fear of being worthy of the kind of love she showed me in that room." Vivian pressed her hands to her mouth, tears flowing freely now. "Vivian." Adrian looked directly into the camera, his eyes full of emotion. "I care for you deeply. I never should have let you go. You deserved better than my fear. You deserved my courage to match yours." The press conference erupted with questions, but Adrian stepped back from the podium, his public vulnerability already unprecedented for a man of his position. Throughout the day, clips from his speech went viral. Social media exploded with support for both Adrian and Vivian. Their story touched something in people, a reminder that even in the coldest corporate world, genuine human connection could bloom. Vivian spent the afternoon in a daze, alternating between watching replays of Adrian's speech and helping her elderly neighbors process the news. They gathered in her apartment, bringing food and comfort as always, but this time with joy instead of consolation. "That man loves you, child," Gloria declared, watching Adrian's speech for the third time. "Look at his eyes when he says your name." Evening brought a sudden summer storm. Rain lashed against Vivian's windows as thunder rolled across the city. She sat in her living room, lights dim, listening to the storm and trying to process everything that had happened. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. When she opened it, her heart stopped. Adrian stood in her hallway, completely drenched from the rain. His expensive suit was soaked through, his hair plastered to his forehead. He trembled slightly, though whether from cold or emotion, she couldn't tell. "Vivian," he whispered, his eyes full of hope and apology. Water dripped from his clothes onto her welcome mat. "I'm so sorry." His voice shook with vulnerability. "Please, may I come in?" Vivian stepped back from a doorway, heart thundering in her chest. "Come in," she whispered, watching as Adrian crossed her threshold, water dripping from his suit onto her worn welcome mat. She hurried to her tiny bathroom, returning with her fluffiest towel, a small luxury she'd treated herself to last Christmas. "Here," she offered, trying to steady her trembling hands. Adrian accepted the towel gratefully, running it over his face and hair. "I'm sorry about your floor," he said softly, looking at the small puddle forming beneath his expensive shoes. "Don't worry about the floor," Vivian replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She gestured toward her small couch, the centerpiece of her modest living room. "Please sit." They settled onto the couch together, their knees touching in the confined space. The contact sent electricity through them both. Outside, the storm continued its symphony against her windows, creating an intimate cocoon around their moment. Adrian twisted the damp towel in his hands, his usual composure nowhere to be found. "I've rehearsed what to say 1,000 times," he admitted. "But now that I'm here—" He trailed off, looking lost. "Just speak from your heart," Vivian encouraged softly, echoing words her grandmother had often told her. Adrian took a deep breath. "These past days without you have been torture," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "Every room in my penthouse echoes with your absence. Every morning I wake up reaching for you, expecting to hear your voice, your laugh." He paused, swallowing hard. "I thought I was protecting you by pushing you away, but I was really protecting myself. From feeling, from being vulnerable, from the terrifying reality that in just 10 days you became essential to me." Tears welled in Vivian's eyes as she listened. Her hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. "I've spent my whole life building walls," Adrian continued, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Creating systems, maintaining control. Then you walked into that panic room with me. And in 10 days, you dismantled every defense I'd ever constructed. You saw me, really saw me. And instead of running, you stayed. You prayed with me. You held me through panic attacks. You showed me what genuine kindness looks like." "I never stopped caring about you," Vivian admitted, her free hand reaching up to wipe away a tear. "Even when it hurt, even when I thought you'd decided I wasn't worth the risk, I couldn't stop my heart from holding on to you." Adrian turned to face her fully, his eyes intense. "You were worth every risk, Vivian, every single one. I was a fool to ever suggest otherwise." She released a shaky breath, years of insecurity rising to the surface. "Even with all the complications, the media attention, the difference in our worlds?" "None of that matters," Adrian insisted, squeezing her hand. "What matters is how you make me feel grounded, whole, like I can finally breathe properly for the first time in years." Vivian felt something tight in her chest begin to unravel. "Would you—" She hesitated, then pressed on. "Would you like to take a walk with me? There are some people I'd like you to meet." Adrian's face softened with a gentle smile. "I'd love that." They stepped out into the evening air, the storm having passed, leaving behind that fresh, clean smell that follows summer rain. Their hands found each other naturally as they walked down the street of Vivian's neighborhood. From various porches, elderly residents who had supported Vivian through her heartbreak watched with knowing smiles. "There's my girl," Gloria called from her rocking chair. "And this must be your young man." Adrian, to Vivian's delight, showed no hesitation in approaching the older woman. "I'm Adrian Cross, Mum. Thank you for taking care of Vivian when I failed to." Gloria's eyes twinkled as she assessed him. "Well, you're making it right now, aren't you? That's what matters." They continued their walk, stopping to chat with several more of Vivian's neighbors. Each time, Adrian listened intently to their stories, genuinely interested in the community that had supported Vivian. As they approached the community center, excited shouts erupted from the playground. "Miss Vivian! Miss Vivian!" A group of children rushed towards them, surrounding Vivian with hugs and chatter. She laughed, kneeling down to their level. "Hey, everyone. I want you to meet someone special. This is Adrian." The children turned their curious faces toward him. Adrian, the powerful CEO who could silence boardrooms with a glance, looked momentarily uncertain before dropping to one knee beside Vivian. "Hello," he said warmly. "I hear you're all amazing actors." "Miss Vivian teaches us Shakespeare," one little girl proclaimed proudly. "I'm playing Puck. She's the best teacher ever," another child added. "She makes the scary words make sense." Adrian glanced at Vivian, seeing her in a new light as she interacted with her students. Her face glowed with purpose and joy, and he fell a little more in love with her right there. They spent time with the children, Adrian listening as they performed a scene they'd been practicing. The community center volunteers watched from the sidelines, nodding approvingly at the way the billionaire sat cross-legged on their worn carpet, giving the children his complete attention. As evening deepened into night, they began their walk back to Vivian's apartment. The street lamps cast warm pools of light on the sidewalk, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of blooming jasmine. Adrian stopped beneath one of the street lamps, turning to face Vivian. "I need you to know something," he said seriously. "There is no contract anymore, no facade, no business arrangement. Just me, standing here, hoping you'll let me be part of your future." Vivian stepped closer, her heart full. "What kind of future do you see?" "One where I support your dreams, the community center, your acting, whatever you want to pursue. One where we face challenges together, instead of letting fear drive us apart. One where I get to wake up every morning and thank God for bringing you into my life." Tears shimmered in Vivian's eyes as she pressed her forehead against his. "I'm ready," she whispered. "I'm ready for that future with you." They stood there beneath the street lamp, holding each other as the world around them settled into a peaceful quiet. The night breeze whispered through the trees, and somewhere in the distance crickets began their evening song. In that moment, everything felt possible. A new beginning, born from 10 days in the dark, and a love neither of them had expected to find. The neighborhood seemed to hold its breath around them, witnessing the beauty of two souls finding their way back to each other. Their journey had begun in a sterile panic room, but it would continue here, in the warmth of a community that understood the power of faith, forgiveness, and love's ability to bridge any distance. Thank you for being here. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd love to see you again. Subscribe, and tomorrow I'll bring you another story crafted with heart.